We start the way we start every week. I've been watching the same thing as you, Art.
There we
But
go.
what you been watching?
We, as I'm pretty sure you guys have been watching Spider-Man Homecoming, The Return, as it says, Homecoming to Marvel, Marvel Disney, what people have been waiting for the longest time, but not necessarily Marvel Disney, because they're sharing it. Sony is sharing it with Disney Marvel. There's the famous now interview of your boy Kevin Feige not knowing that I forget her name. Maybe you know her name from Sony.
Oh shoot!
Where she revealed, the one whose emails all leaked back in that 20,
Amy
20
Pascal, I believe.
Yeah, Amy Pascal.
Yeah.
All her emails that leaked way back in the day. Well, she's super excited because she's like, "Hey, they
Revealing
signed the
details
deal."
in front of Kevin Feige.
Exactly.
Who
She is like
is a
that
little more
person.
coy about what he likes to reveal about the Marvel movies.
She's that person who is like, "Hey, I'll do you a solid. You can borrow this." And Marvel's like, "Oh, perfect. We finally get this." And then she's like, "But, these movies over here, now we can connect them to the Disney Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you can't touch those because we only gave you one character." And now Kevin Feige's like, "Oh, snap." He's like dating that one girl who he just judged her on her looks. He's like, "This looks really nice." Then it turns out to be like this crazy girl
You get
who's
the
just
whole
going to take
package
advantage
there.
of you,
Yeah,
going to take your money, going to take
that's
everything.
what's a little crazy here is like,
Yes.
so this is the now famous deal between Sony and Disney Marvel where
like a Spider-Man.
Sony would be able to use different Avengers characters, but Spider-Man is part of the MCU, and Kevin Feige can use him in the Avengers movies.
Yeah.
I guess it's mutually beneficial, but you look at Spider-Man Homecoming, I mean, we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff here, but you have cameos, not only the major cameos from Iron Man and Happy, played by Jon Favreau, who's in a lot of these movies, but you have Captain America showing up for a bunch of stuff. You have a bunch of other allusions to the MCU. You're a little better at spotting these than I am.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them in there from the events. Literally, it starts off.
Yeah.
They're picking up garbage from the first Avengers.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's the whole so the whole opening, which I found a little bit strange, but I mean, I guess they're trying to update this whole idea of Peter Parker as an aspiring photographer. He sort of is vlogging his experience of
I thought
joining
that was
the
kinda cool.
Captain America Civil War fight. Yeah, I mean, I just found it an odd way into the movie, especially because they did that a film by Peter Parker title card at the
Catch
front.
off guard there, yeah.
But it was fun, it was cute, and it's modern, and it's definitely so. One of the things that's very clear in this iteration of Spider-Man that they're going for a much younger vibe.
Finally,
Yeah,
You're not using a 30-year-old.
Yeah, this is, I mean, here you have like a very youthful energy, not just in the age of the actors, the look of the actors, but also in the attitude of a lot of these people. The one thing that I thought was a little strange was that you're using Blitzkrieg Bop. Which I don't know how many young kids are still listening to that. I mean, I guess I went through a Ramones phase too, so maybe it's just that age that
It comes around. But they're also from New York, so I figured that's why they had used them. And I didn't mind. Hey, I'm not gonna mind it if the Ramones are in a movie.
It's just a little silly to me because nearly everybody in this cast was born after the Ramones happened.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess they always come back. But I agree with what you're saying about they look like they're teenagers.
And there's like an
look
effortless
like they're in high
diversity
school.
to the movie too, not just in the love interests and Zendaya showing up and his best friend Ned, I think his name was, who's this really fun as his guy on the phone. Or what was it?
Well,
I don't.
He's practically he's a mixture because he's a real character, but at the same time, Miles Morales, who gets mentioned in the movie a bit, Miles Morales has a friend. That is his friend.
Oh, okay. So he
it's
is
like
canon?
a mix-up. Yeah, well, it's like a
In a way.
mashup of the actual character, like who he's named, the name of him. He is in the comics, but he just kept the name. He took the attitude and everything of the other person. Literally, the whole interaction of meeting, of figuring out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man is practically how he figures out that his buddy Miles Morales is.
Interesting.
So it was like a mixture. So I thought that was pretty cool. But you brought up two things: the youthfulness of it. I love the fact that they look like they were young. The crush, 27 years old.
Was she really?
But at least she looks. Yeah, that blows my mind. First of all, but she looks like a teenager. It's not this the boy next door type thing where the man looks like he's 35 years old pretending to be a senior. None of that. She looked her age. Tom Holland looks the age. Zendaya looks the age.
Yeah.
I really like the fact that they had the girl from. She reminds me of Margot Robbie Jr., the one from The Nice Guys. I do not know what her name is.
I don't know what her name is either, but I know who
you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. But yeah, like you mentioned, Tom Holland's only 21 and Zendaya's 20, and they were, this
But
is
they
a movie they
look
filmed
young.
at least 6 months ago, if not
Exactly.
more. So yeah, it's very, very got that youthful energy. I did think that like maybe it played a little bit into too cheesy into some of the teen comedy aspects. Marissa Tomei
Yeah.
has that line about changing bodies, and it's like, that's the kind of thing that like no one wants to hear that. It's not.
But it came from Marissa Tomei, so I give it a pass. I'm the guy in the movie who gave her the free sticky rice. Whatever you need. And
Yeah.
then you never see him again.
Yeah, you
'Cause
larb her.
everyone was flirting with her.
Yeah.
Hey, she's spent. She's still.
I larb her too. I can't blame you for that.
Yeah.
I do think it was a little strange to have her as Aunt May. I didn't think that it necessarily like took me out of the movie.
didn't.
It's just such a contrast to the way that Spider-Man
The
had
old
been presented.
Aunt May. They keep getting younger. I can't wait till Aunt May's just cousin May, and she's like
Yeah.
18-year-olds with them. But
It's
with
just
her,
May.
I'm cool with that movie that they wanted. Amy Pascal's making her own universe and not letting anybody else know. So hey, if she's the main character, I'm all for it. But
Yeah.
in terms of this movie,
Yes.
with the usefulness of it, I saw that, like you mentioned, it's not just with the cast and the story, but the way that it's filmed and edited, the way that it cuts to that, a film by Peter Parker.
There's
and it's-
a briskness to a lot
it's
of
a
the
found
pace.
footage movie, almost in a sense,
That
for a little bit of
opening
it. The way
was-
that it cuts to Civil War, and he's just like, like vlogging the whole thing of it. It's a Casey Neistat video for a good 10 minutes in the movie.
Yeah.
And then later on, the humor of it. One of my favorite edits is when myself, who is in the movie, your lobby boy, he's
Oh.
playing Flash Gordon, but he's kind of like a nerd,
Yeah.
but also a bully. He's just that preppy kid. That one
The
scene,
dude from Grand Budapest.
Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yes, I forgot his name.
And dope,
Tony
yeah.
something.
He has that moment where Spider-Man robs his car. And he's just like, no, you don't understand. This is my dad's car. There's no way. Absolutely not that you can't. And then it just cuts to him taking the car. Like, those abrupt cuts like that. It was just, I really liked those. I thought those were pretty funny and I kept with it. But then you also brought the diversity aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know myself. I'm a person, I care about quality before diversity.
Yeah, you're you don't care about the diversity if it's not there for an inorganic reason.
Exactly. I'm not going to support something just to be like, they look like me. They're terrible characters. They're token characters. This is hand-me-downs of another character. Stop. Respect yourself. Come on now. You're better than that. Ask for good quality characters.
I thought this movie had that.
And they had them. My biggest
Yeah.
thing was with the Mary Jane character.
Mm-hmm.
But she was a really good character, and it turns
MJ.
out she's just... They played you on. They played me on that one.
Yeah.
It's just a sly little thing in there. There's still an opportunity for the redhead version to still come out, but she was a funny character.
Yeah, she was fun, and it was interesting how like kind of secondary to a lot of things.
They didn't
she
overplay
was.
her.
They didn't
Yeah.
overplay her. They didn't overplay a lot of the relationships in this movie. They really left a lot sort of to the fringes. And
Yeah.
one thing that I sort of noted was how much assumed familiarity there is in this movie that the other ones don't have. This is our sixth movie
Yes.
of Spider-Man in 15 years, and they know that. They know we don't need an Uncle Ben story. They
you.
know we don't need all those origins. They know that we understand what these iconic images of Spider-Man are. They mention the radioactive spider in passing because everybody knows
know, yeah.
everybody who's going to go see this movie at least knows what he's talking about. So by passing a lot of those smaller details, I think that the movie stayed entertaining a little bit more. I think
I
it
agree.
moved very quickly. I do think that the second act was a bit too long and dragged. I kind of, I think there was
The
a
fight
good balance,
sequences.
and I liked I actually was thrown by the twist in the third act.
Yeah, so we'll get there. As you know, this is spoilers. We
Yes.
say this in the video. Completely.
Spoilers,
100%. And there would have been a little annotation there that you saw, but
Yeah.
we're all about spoilers here. You had enough time to watch it. Yeah, that Michael Keaton twist was dope. That caught me off guard. Absolutely did not see that coming. I had a mug. Dropped it. Kevin Spacey style.
It's for me like I had started to become a little bit disinterested by the movie and checking my watch, and that brought me actually back in.
Boy, I was in recliners. I went, what?
Yeah.
That whole sequence up to the whole part with the parked car was fantastic, in my opinion.
So, I mean, I liked the assumed familiarity of it. I do think, and like, there's a couple people saying, like, oh, this movie actually kind of needed an Uncle Ben scene. And, like, no, I don't think you need an Uncle Ben scene. I do think that maybe you need some more tension and definition of the stakes. That doesn't have to be an Uncle Ben scene, but it was kind of, the whole movie was this idea of Peter Parker attempting to prove himself to Iron Man, to try and like get into the Avengers. And for me, that sort of made it a little more frivolous than I think it could have been. I wasn't as invested in this idea, I think that's part of the reason I grew bored during the middle of the movie. It's like, is there anything bigger going on? Yeah, there's this villain, but even the way that they introduced I like Michael Keaton as the Vulture, or as Birdman, as I call him, his second appearance as Birdman. But I think that the way that the character is written, he feels very villain of the week, if you know what I mean. He feels like somebody who's just in to pose a threat and will not necessarily drastically shift the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, I liked him because, to me, he's my second favorite behind Loki. And my list goes Loki, Vulture. That's it. But to me, I liked him because of his backstory. And you're right. Because of the setup for the twist, they didn't delve in as much in the first half. Then it happens, and it's the momentum that leads up to that moment that goes, ooh, and he's such a good character with such a Breaking Bad story to him that isn't uncovered for you because of the way they had to set up the twist and never show you with his family and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of that comes through Keaton's performance. I think Keaton brings a gravitas here. And, you know, similarly, like, you get the right mixture of character and actor with, like you did with Hiddleston and Loki. I think that's what really works here, less so the presentation of the character, but when you have the way that Keaton will sort of smirk when he calls Spider-Man Pedro. That's all you need from that guy. Like you hear so much in those phrases, in the way he talks to Peter.
I liked his backstory. I thought it was good. Again, the way that in order to set up the twist, you couldn't get too much into it, but the fact that they left him alive shows you that there's going to result in him probably coming back. I thought they were going to go the Spider-Man route and kill him Green Goblin style.
So do you want to talk about the first post-credits scene?
Yeah, we can get into it.
All right, so the first post-credits scene is in prison, and I am not familiar enough with the MCU to know who he's talking to, but Keaton has been locked away, Vulture has been locked away, and he comes across who?
He comes across a guy who's supposed to be the Scorpion. Now he dresses up as a scorpion. That being said, though, the Vulture in the comics looks like an edition of Toucan Sam that got like completely scrapped. So he looks like a cartoon, like a comic book character. I thought he looked really cool in this movie. I really liked the way that his bird machine looked. That thing, like, that legit scared me. Like, that thing was chopping stuff off. So I believe they're gonna do the same thing for the character of Scorpion, and being able to make him like look pretty cool. He's got like venom, literally, in like the needle thing that he has. But yeah, I can't remember.
There's like a very like industrial kind of look to it. So I think that's sort of what you're talking about, that like metal industrial.
I think they're gonna make it look cool and not as cheesy.
It almost sort of reminded me of I don't know if you've played BioShock Infinite.
Come on now.
I forget the name of the villain at the end, but the big mechanical bird. There's just
that tries to fight you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's
you have to take it
the
down.
Same like rigidness, but also like heaviness to it.
And it looks cool.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm excited for him specifically, and I mean, we'll get into what it's going to spawn out.
Oh, he's Scorpion. Yes.
The actor. He was in Better Call Saul. But I know him mostly. He did the motion capture and voice for Far Cry 3, for the bad guy in Far Cry 3.
Oh.
And this dude, he's the one on the cover. This dude is menacing, and I'm glad that he's getting more work, and he needs to be in more stuff. He was fantastic in Better Call Saul. So to have him possibly be a lead in a future, installment is dope. But what it also leads to is that interaction in the post-credit scene is he tells Michael Keaton, I heard a rumor that you know who it is. Michael Keaton says, no, if I did, he'd be dead. I guess he's, he saved my life, so I guess that's why he's letting me go.
Yeah. They established that kind of, like, moral code where, like, oh, you saved me, so I'll give you a break. And he seems to be, like, protecting Peter a little bit.
I saw it as selfish because he's probably like, if I tell you Peter, and Peter's hanging out with my girl, then you're going to probably hurt my girl on the way. I saw it as that too.
True. And there is sort of, like, a hint there that he maybe wants to get back at Peter himself.
And he is.
It's almost a reference to the second post-credits scene, which is at the very, very end when Captain America shows up for another one of those PSAs, and he talks about the virtue of patience and how sometimes you wait around and you wait, and the thing you get isn't as good as you thought it would be, how it's not everything you've been waiting for. It's a sort of in-joke about the nature of these post-credits scenes, about how you ask the audience to sit there and wait for little morsels of information. But I think it also even references the previous post-credits scene, which seems to indicate that, like, there is more to this MCU, but maybe Scorpion isn't gonna show up. Maybe it is going to kind of just not mean that much in the greater MCU.
Hey,
They're just letting you know that they're thinking of it too.
Maybe Kevin Feige doesn't want it to be, but Amy Pascal's going to make it happen.
She'll announce it soon.
Well, the thing being is that I believe they still have that Sinister Six movie, and Sinister Six, if you don't know, is like a team-up of evil villains that go after Spider-Man. And Scorpion, he's a part of that.
Right.
And I think that they're still going to try to make that alongside the Venom movie, so chances are he might be coming back.
Yeah.
None of that means anything to me.
It's possible. The other thing is, like, I don't know if this actor's necessarily famous enough to be the big villain in the next movie. They got to go from Michael Keaton to him, whose name I'm not sure of. But
I guess.
I would be down for him to be one of several villains.
I'm down
for
him to do it, but to me, there's the one thing that really stuck out to me. There's a little cameo that happens in the movie, and it was actually in some trailers. And when this person came out, I had no idea about it. Got kind of spoiled for me, but I thought, those are just rumors. Those are just something else. I didn't want to believe it, and then it happened, and I saw him come out. I was like, stay woke. When Donald Glover came out, my heart skipped a beat. I didn't know why.
The people next to me were like, "Wait, who's that? It's Childish, the rapper guy? Yeah, Childish Gambino.
Yeah,
he's on Community.
That guy, the comedian. Yeah,
Shut
dude.
the fuck up."
To me, I loved it. For those of you who don't know, there was a whole campaign to get Donald Glover to play Spider-Man, and then the character of Miles Morales in the comic books, which again is the perfect example of not just making Peter Parker black, but creating another character on his own, coming from like a bad part of town, who looks up to Peter Parker. And in the comics, Peter Parker dies, and he takes the mantle with a different suit to play a new Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And he's half black, half Puerto Rican. And they modeled the character of Miles Morales after Barack Obama and Childish Gambino. And when they made the animated series, which is really good, that was revolved around Miles Morales, they had Childish Gambino voice for
Donald
2 episodes.
Glover.
Yeah.
Yes.
Donald Glover, dang it. It's just, I downloaded all his albums as Childish Gambino to listen on the way to Cali, so it's still there for me. But yeah, people were still campaigning for him when this reboot came out for it to be him. But I was like, he's too old. And when I heard that the cameo was going, I didn't want to pay attention too much to it. And then I see him, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be more to it. It can't just be a little thing. And he can't be Miles Morales.
Yeah,
he's acting a little bit too much like a gangster. And I'm like, is this his character from Atlanta? What's going on here? And then when they said his name, and he mentions his little nephew, Miles Morales' uncle is a bad guy.
Oh.
Who accidentally brings a spider when he's robbing a lab, and he brings the radioactive spider back home, and that ends up biting Miles Morales, and that's how he becomes Spider-Man. That's how he gets his abilities. But eventually, he reforms. He's known as a Prowler as well. And he ends up working with Peter Parker. But when I heard that, I was like, that is genius. Because he's too old. He's too old. They did such a fantastic job with
all this other stuff going on. I want him to do more Atlanta.
Exactly.
He doesn't need to be
But
and a teenage Miles Morales.
that won me over, and I'm like, whoever you get to be Miles Morales, please. He's canon now.
I was underwhelmed by the first scene that Donald Glover was in.
Yeah, it was short.
Because like I thought, oh, that's it. Like I heard about this cameo, and he's just the other gangster in that
Yeah,
scene.
really, gangster number 2.
But coming back, it was a much more memorable scene, the second one, and then you actually get to hear his name, how he figures into the greater universe. That's a really cool Easter egg.
Those are the Easter eggs I like, where it's not just like, hey, look at this. It's like,
yeah.
hey, that was a cool character though. That's a cool
Exactly.
Easter egg. But
he justified being there, even if he
it was a
isn't
funny
an Easter
scene.
egg character.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a good scene.
It wasn't Wonder Woman just looking through files.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Overall, though, did you find this movie satisfying? There's a lot of hope pinned on this movie on behalf of Sony.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about the future of Spider-Man in the MCU and beyond in our topic of the week. But this movie on its own, did it succeed? Are you happy with it? Do you think it's good enough, or is it just okay?
I think it's a very good movie. I don't think it is better than my personal favorite, which is Spider-Man 2. I think Spider-Man 2 is revolutionary. I love everything about Spider-Man 2, even the cheesiness. I believe it still holds up. I was very skeptical about this movie. I really liked Tom Holland in Civil War. I wasn't sure how John Watts was going to be as a director, especially with his other 2 movies, Cop Car and Clown. But I think he pulled through. I think that there's a cut out there that might be even better. Because some edits were like, okay, this is funny. We're going some like they were very visual on some of the cuts that I thought were hilarious, very subtle, not all up in your face. There's one where Zendaya where they're all waving and Zendaya goes, and then he pulls out the middle finger, like little things like that. That I was just like, okay, there is a cut here where they didn't let some of these things slip through. I want to see that, and it's gonna make me like the movie even more. It's a movie.
Yeah, they definitely were like skirting on that PG-13
Penis Parker.
rating. Like there's Penis Parker, the last line of the movie, getting it.
Yeah, and then cutting away with it. Yeah,
getting cut off.
I like those.
Yeah, they definitely. I feel like they must have had a few other like. Can we get away with this?
And they're like, no.
Probably
He's like, don't give me more of those
abrupt
abrupt cuts. We've already given you 10 of those. Yeah, but it's one of those movies that the more I sit with it, the more I want to see it again, and I really enjoyed it.
So that's interesting because I'm actually right now, and granted, this is in the 16 hours post having seen it. I'm feeling the opposite in that, like, I don't really feel like I need to see it again. I thought it was satisfying enough. I enjoyed about 80% of the movie, and I thought that you want there to be a reason to revisit these characters if they're going to go through with a reboot, and I felt like it justified its existence. But I did think there was kind of like a frivolity to some of it in that, not just beyond it being like a superhero thing, I just that it didn't really, all of this being ultimately kind of like, so Tony, am I in? And then ending with him sort of walking away from the Avengers, at least for now. I think that I'm going to forget more and more of this movie as I get away from it. And while I appreciate elements of it, and I liked Tom Holland's performance a lot, it didn't really provide me any of the big action set pieces or memorable shots even that I think some of the other best superhero movies or even best Spider-Man movies do. So I'm a little mixed on it. I enjoyed it, and if you like Spider-Man, I feel like you should see it. But I can't say it's like a great
I feel
movie.
that. I think it's very hard to top a lot of the scenes, like the train scene from Spider-Man 2. They just can mimic it. They got the same stuntmen from the original Spider-Man movies. But to me, I'm glad they didn't go over the top with the set pieces. And to me, it was more of a character arc. I enjoyed that. The whole idea. I can see how you didn't like it. To me, by the end of it, I kind of saw where it was going, and I'm like, okay, it's cool. There's an interview out there where they're talking about that the story arc for Peter Parker is going to span throughout all these movies. It's supposed to be like a 5-movie story arc where he comes in and he's not just a cameo. It's adding to pieces of a bigger story that's going to wrap up somewhere. It's confusing to me, but I like what I'm hearing about it, that they have an overall story, so I guess you can piece his cameos together and it's going to create something. But I like the idea of what Iron Man tells him. we see him as, oh, he wants to be an Avenger, he wants to be an Avenger, he wants to be an Avenger, he needs the suit, he needs the suit, and Iron Man tells him at one point, if you're nothing without the suit, then you're a nobody. And the whole idea was for him to realize that, I know it's cheesy, all right? I know it's cheesy, but this is what Peter Parker's supposed to be. It's something we haven't gotten in a while, right? All the other Peter Parkers, they've been too old, and again, I love Toby, but the whole, I break up with you. No, I break up with you, Peter. I didn't need any of that, all right? It's always been focusing on a girl. My man's finally focusing on himself. And the whole scene, I know it was a little cheesy, but for those of us who are comic geeks, we know that iconic scene where he gets up from the rubble. It's a huge comic moment in Spider-Man's arc, and they had that here. It's not as good as the comic book. It's not, but because it's kind of cheesy when he finally gets up, he sees himself half in the water, and he comes and that's when he has the realization that it's within him. And he realizes that he doesn't need to be an Avenger. He just needs to be that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I geeked out. I understand what you're saying. I liked it.
Yeah.
And it's a fun movie. That's the one thing we can agree on. It is a fun movie.
Totally.
And I enjoyed it for that.
Totally. And I'm not trying to be that guy, but I do think it's at least interesting to note that we have so many of these superhero movies set in New York, and still this manages to get a plane hijacking imagery and buried beneath the rubble imagery.
I saw that. I was like, get that plane out of there. What were you thinking?
Yeah, Ooh. Like, they always skirt up on this line of, like, this is evoking national tragedies, but sometimes they do it better than others, and this was one where it felt like a little, I don't know, facetious to
Hey, but they played
whatever.
They played the Ramones, so
yeah, so it's from New York.
I say watch it in theaters. I enjoyed it for that. I'm looking forward to watching it again.
And I think if you're the type of person who's interested in watching it in theaters, you should. You know, like it's not. There's nothing here that is going to convince you otherwise. But if you're not super eager to see it, like it's not that movie either. But I like Tom Holland, so I think that hopefully this franchise has the potential to put out a special movie in the future. We move on to Yay or Nay, our weekly segment where we get into the latest in the entertainment industry.